continue doing this work, having these conversations among us as HBCUs and our communities. So let me share my screen. Okay, let me know if you're seeing my screen, everyone. Yes? Okay. Yes. So in this space today, we're thinking about critical thinking and problem solving skills. My name is Dr. Paul Massy. I'm the Director of Engaged Learning at Florida Memorial University. I'm also responsible for our Center for Teaching and Learning. And what we're going to be doing is very, no pun intended, it's going to be an engaging session where we're going to be looking at fostering these skills, these essential skills within a culturally diverse context. And I was happy that our host ensured that you shared where you're from in the chat. So I was able to realize that even us here having this conversation, we are in various geographical areas, and that gives us the opportunity to also have our own diverse context. So the first thing I want us to do is critical thinking is not new. So what I want you to share, what I want us to share with each other, when you hear the word critical thinking, what is one word or words that come to mind? Feel free to use the chat feature, or if you want to unmute yourself and share. One word or a few words that come to mind when you hear critical thinking. Okay, let me see if I have access to, okay, good. Going beneath the surface, beautiful. The brain seeking truth, synthesis, intelligence building, reevaluation, analyze, good. Logic, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And so those words that we share, we not understand as a community how important ensuring that these skills are taught and are present, especially in our institutions and our communities. And let's look at this important definition from the Center for Critical Thinking. Critical thinking is the ability to think about one's thinking. So there's that metacognition that is so critical. And as a result, and I liked this second part because it's reminding us to continue to be reflective practitioners. That critical thinking isn't, when it's present in higher education or in any space, it shouldn't be passive. It should be something that is active. It allows us to also be reflective, because once we're reflective, the thinking is present or presented in improved form. And I think that is an important point for us to consider, because we would realize in our spaces, sometimes we have to be conscious of what are our personal values, reflect on those values, and how they shape our perspectives and our engagement of critical thinking and problem solving in the classroom or not. We also need to recognize our unconscious biases. Are they supporting what we implement or not in the classroom? Or are there barriers based on what we may consider to be important or not? And what this is doing for us is allowing us to develop that self-awareness, because it's not something passive, it is something active. And it allows us to now notice our own instinctive reactions to situations and where they are coming from. So once we're able to develop that self-awareness, it puts us in a better position to really promote critical thinking in the classroom, in our spaces, in our communities, and to see the value of it. In your responses a short while ago, you all was spot on that critical thinking skills are crucial because it allows us to provide objectivity. It allows us to be evidence-based. All right, because I think sometimes when we hear the word critical thinking, what happens in spaces, people say, this is an abstract, uh, this is an abstract concept. How do we make sense of all that we plan to do? What are these strategies? What are these essential skills? And we're saying that they are evidence-based. We use data when we are participating in critical thinking. There's logical reasoning. And I love these two because this is what employers are looking for. And that's why we always see in our job specifications or descriptions, we see they are looking for employees who have critical thinking skills because they realize they are creative and they also present novel solutions. And that's why that diversity in these spaces are so important. The other thing we have to consider, and I want to be intentional with this, is the way we can use technological tools, especially, and we know what the buzzword is today, AI, and the role that AI can play as a technological tool as we promote critical thinking in our spaces. And I attended a conference and the keynote speaker addressed AI as a technological tool, and there was a panel that followed afterwards. And interestingly, he said to us, listen, as all our technological tools, is either we allow AI to create our future for us, or we be the co-creators of that future. And what he was saying to us is that we have to leave that human element because AI is a tool and AI is not present to replace us. So what I want to do is first have an engagement with the tool. We're going to look at critical thinking problems in diverse contexts using AI. So allow me just to change what I share with you now. So let's look at that. We are going to switch to Chat GPT. Let me know if you're seeing. Beautiful. Now, I am at Florida Memorial University. So we're looking at problem solving, critical thinking in a culturally diverse context. So the first one I want to use is we're going to be generating problems, and I'm going to ask for one eventually from one of the participants. So I'm going to generate a problem that is using critical thinking skills, but I'm going to use environmental science uh, in the South Florida area. So I'm going to type generate a problem that uses critical thinking skills and I say environmental science for South Florida. All right, for South Florida. Let's see what happens. Maybe move that. Okay, good. All right, so let's see if I can find the response in less than 20 seconds. Look at what just happened. So we were just talking about those higher order skills, critical thinking skills, and in diverse contexts. And what I've been sharing with our faculty and my colleagues The beauty of AI's use in diverse contexts is now it has access to data that can allow us to present diverse contexts. So in my case, I just spoke about environmental science. I am in South Florida, and I want to ensure that it's a problem that engages problem solving and critical thinking skills. And look at what just happened. I'll just read the prompt, the beginning. In South Florida, the delicate balance of the ecosystem in the Everglades National Park is under threat due to invasive species and changing climate patterns. Because we know that's a major issue for us in Florida, climate change. Your task is to propose a comprehensive management plan to address the following critical issues. And we're not going to read everything. Invasive species control, habitat restoration, water management, climate change adaptation, and look at the ending, same thing we was talking about in critical thinking, the whole process. Your management plan should integrate scientific research. So that's our data that we're talking about there. Who are the stakeholders in the area? So remember, we're using it as a tool to assist with the teaching that we would have done in the classroom, innovative solutions to address it, and is giving here an outline. Consider the economic, social, ecological implications of your proposals and justify your recommendations. So it's an opportunity here to still include citations, to still verify the data that is going to be used, and also an opportunity to share what has been presented, what your students would have presented. So it's engaging all the critical thinking skills and the problem solving skills and using evidence base to complete this exercise. And interestingly here, this was able to generate this problem, AI ChatGPT, in less than 20 seconds. So let's change this, because at Florida Memorial University as well, I also have students who are athletes. So, and I'm sharing that with you to say, let's think about diverse contexts. So I'm going to change what I'm asking ChatGPT to create for me as a problem. So the other thing is that we are 5 minutes away from Hard Rock Stadium. It's going to be one of the venues for World Cup 2026 in the United States. I am a soccer fan. We say football in the Caribbean. I am a follower of Massy. All right. So all of that, and I'm sharing all of that to say that context is so important in terms of what we value, who our students are. And it's okay for us, once we know our students, their backgrounds, their biographies, their experiences, now to be specific with the problems that we are creating. So now I'm going to generate a problem that uses critical thinking skills in sports. How do we say this? I'm not going to be perfect, as the United States hosts the Soccer World Cup in 2026. Let's see what happens. All right, let me just make sure we have the spaces here. Let's see. All right, it's okay. This is the longest I've ever seen it stay. You make sure my prompt generate a problem that uses critical thinking skills in sports as the United States hosts the Soccer World Cup in 2026. All right, let me copy and paste and see what happens again. Copy, paste, enter. All right, let's try. All right, it's not responding. I've done this before and it responded. Let me see if I have the response here. Management, previous 7 days. All right, this was the one before. All right, but it would respond to this one again. But the point I was trying to make is that what the technology allows you to do is to be more specific with your prompt, especially if it may be an area that may not be your expertise. The other thing it allows to do is to present situation that may be ambiguous, and now students could verify the data even in groups when they do cooperative learning. So what I want, let's see if somebody could present to me a topic, any topic that you want us to consider when we think about critical thinking or problem solving skills. Anybody? Let's see. I'm looking in the chat. Thanks, Lisa, for saying outside the box. And Timothy, rationalize. Any topic from anybody? Problem solving, critical thinking skills that we want to ask. Social issues research. Do you have a specific issue? Dr. King? Foster care reentry. All right, good. So let's look at that. So generate problem using critical thinking skills about foster care reentry. Do you want to be more specific? Specific, maybe a geographical space. All right, generate a problem using critical thinking skills about foster care reentry among teenagers. Thank you for that. In Georgia. All right, let's see what happens. Hopefully it worked this time. All right, good. It's responding. Thank you for that. So let's look at the prompt is important. One of the things we're realizing is it's spot on in terms of critical thinking skill, that these are higher order skills. It's allowing our students to analyze, it's allowing our students to synthesize, it's allowing our students to use evidence-based data. And there are opportunities here where we can turn this into either individual assignments or group work or opportunities for discussions in the classroom. So look at this specific one that was generated in less than 20 seconds. Teenagers aging out of foster care in Georgia face significant challenges when reintegrated into society, often leading to reentry into the foster care system or experiencing homelessness, unemployment, and involvement in the criminal justice system. Your task is to develop a comprehensive strategy to address the root causes of foster care reentry among teenagers in Georgia, focusing on critical thinking skills to identify systemic barriers and innovative solutions to support successful transitions to independence. So there's so much we could do here in terms of applying these critical thinking skills in diverse ways. And this is an opportunity for us to even modify what would have been created. So I wanted us to have the opportunity here to use it as a tool to see how this can actually support the work that we want to do with critical thinking skills and problem solving, especially using AI as one of those tools. And I just saw something in the chat. Okay, good. So Dr. King is saying, and rightly so, And that's why I said we could be even more specific. She's saying for our HBCU communities, we could even revise that to say to focus on African American teenagers. So that's how we're using it now, leaving that humanness as part of the experience when we are using this tool and showing our students. Yes, we may have been fearful at the beginning. There, in some cases, we're still fearful if it ends up in the wrong hands. But we in the higher education space and our HBCUs and communities, we want to see how you can be successful when using these and having access to data that we didn't have before. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen here. And let me return. Okay, good. All right, let me know if you're, I'm back to presentation. Yes, thank you, Geneva. So ways to improve critical thinking based on our experience we just had. The beautiful thing is it allows us to question the assumptions we may have. So we're not taking it for face value. And one of the things we want to ensure when we're using AI as a tool as well is that our students are able to use evidence-based data. They verify the data they're using. They're still using citations. They're asking questions and analyzing. And one classroom technique I want to share with everyone that works well is when we have these engaging sessions with students in terms of improving critical thinking, let's use those exit tickets. So we could use tickets that ask students, for example, what question related to this session remains uppermost in your mind? And once students present those, we can have a space in Canvas, or if we use Blackboard, or part of our discussions where they post those questions. And that gives you an opportunity now to take those questions and maybe you have an enriching session or your next session with your students. And those could be the prompts that you could have your students engage in cooperative groups where they discuss, they share their perspectives, and they come back and share with the entire class, or this could be an activity for faculty as well. Because it gives you that opportunity after, just like how we engage in, there may be some questions that people still have that need to be answered. All right, let me just check in the. Yes, thanks, Miss Best or Mr. Best. Love exit tickets. Yes, causes students to reflect on their learning, and I want to expand on that. Even in my uh, professional development, we were always encouraging students to participate and students to respond immediately in class. And one of the things we are realizing today, and I want to just share that without forgetting, is sometimes students who we think aren't engaged are the students who actually have to be more reflective in their learning. And as the participant just said, having that student share later on in Canvas and Blackboard in an exercise after they're able to reflect, you realize that the same person that Dr. Massy was saying doesn't say anything in class, isn't participating. But interestingly, that's the person who is contributing before everyone in that discussion post on Canvas. Because that person is someone who actually reflects as part of the process and prefer to respond afterwards. So that's something I want us to be aware of if we have some of those students, that they give them those opportunities, present opportunities for those students to also present. So we also want to consider context. important. That's the work that we're doing in our spaces. We must consider context. I was saying South Florida, we're 5 minutes away from the stadium. It's going to be the World Cup venue, the athletes, we have a soccer team. Consider the context, understand the circumstances and settings that may influence a particular solution. And definitely the last and very critical for us in these spaces, we want them to look for evidence. So we want our students leaving, or even us as we engage each other, to say at the end of the day that research is important. That's why we do research. All right, that's why we cite. All right, if we're going to have an argument must be based on data, all right, evidence. All right, so we want to look for that evidence to support the ideas and arguments. And interestingly, just as some of us have grown up in environments where we always have healthy debates, that could be something intentionally we do in our classrooms with our students, where we one side is for, another side is against, and we have those discussions using evidence. And one of the practices I love is when we are being ambiguous on purpose. So present something to your students. Because one of the complaints I get from faculty now is that our students we have a significant number of students who are passive in terms of their response to what is happening in the classroom. I think one of the ways to ensure that students are engaged is to present a topic that is ambiguous, leave out certain things on purpose, especially a particular context, just like how one of the participants say African American students. So there may be some data that all of your students have, and you leave it out on purpose to have them respond to it. So make it ambiguous so they are going to be engaged as part of the process. And that's okay because you are being intentional as part of the process. So we were just talking about process, and I didn't want us to forget this before as part of the work that we're doing, because problem solving also has a process. We define that problem just like what we did earlier. And that's why critical thinking and problem solving, they complement each other. We're asking our students to gather relevant data, collect information. They can do it individually, they can do it as a group, or they can share that information with each other, generate a wide range of possible options. All right, and that's why I was talking about us developing that self-awareness before. It's okay for us to have students with a wide range of possible options, a wide range of perspectives. It's okay to create that environment. And I think what is important for me to say here, when we're doing that in our HBCUs and on our stakeholder communities, we as the facilitator of this process must ensure that the environment is a safe one. All right, that's important for us to do if we are saying everybody is able to share his or her or their perspective or their perspective. We must ensure that environment is safe. We have those ground rules, especially since we are engaging in critical thinking. But more importantly, we want them to use evidence to support those arguments. All right, and after all of that, they have the opportunity to select and implement the best solution. When we looked at the definition earlier, we are always in that process when we're using critical thinking skills to review and evaluate the results. And we would realize sometimes when we do this exercise with another class, in another semester, in another year, we might have different results based on the evidence that is being presented now. So I want us to use one more exercise because I'm looking at the time. So here now, what we have is we're going to do the opposite. I am presenting to you a solution, and this is another strategy you can use with your students. So not just the problem, present solutions to them. And what you could ask them is, what could be a problem that would have generated this particular solution? So we're doing the opposite this time. Generate a problem that is going to ensure that this is the appropriate solution for this exercise. So I'm going to put all of us on the spot. I chose this as my solution. Can anybody, it doesn't have to be perfect, just like what I was doing with ChatGPT, what you think might be a question or a problem that will allow us to use this as our solution? Anybody? Think about critical thinking. So there are a number of things students have to do. It doesn't have to be done in one class. What may be the question that will generate the solution? Thanks, Sarah. There are three main languages in this tongue. So you see, culturally diverse context. So we're building the problem here. Anybody else want to add to it? Remember that exercise where we told somebody something or somebody said something and somebody has to continue adding to it? So let's add to Sarah's problem that she's created. There are three main languages in this tongue. A driver may not be able to understand if only one language is being used. Thanks, Vincent. So you see, we are creating the problem here for our culturally diverse context. Incidents wheel. What are the traffic issues at this particular intersection? Excellent. Is this a universal shape and color for a driving message? So Timothy is adding another dimension here in terms of the engagement of this solution. How could we lessen the number of accidents at intersections like these? Beautiful. And what I love about what we're doing as a community, we are not telling the students what the problem is. They are deciding now what could be all these problems as a society. And the interesting thing is that we are getting them to practice what we expect of them when they leave, what we expect of them when we think about critical thinking skills, when we think about problem solving skills. And I'll even stretch it to say that, and that's what makes us a democracy. When we build these critical thinking skills and problem solving skills in our spaces. What is the predominant language in this tongue? Thanks, Stefan. Beautiful. Anybody else? Are we good? So here now we have an example of now actually presenting a solution in class and having students respond to it. So I also want us to remember some of the strategies we are accustomed using that works well. Case study, continue to present those case studies because it allows us to think about our culturally diverse context, opportunities for discussions to happen, even prompts from a reading, one of our texts that we are using in the classroom, still present opportunities for those conference style learning. And I don't want us to forget our written assignments. All right, we still want to include those written assignments, but what we're thinking about is how could we use those critical thinking and problem solving skills in these spaces. Let me see the chat before. Good. How could we make the tongue, thanks Brendan, how could we make the tongue more inclusive to persons of various language backgrounds? All right, beautiful. Thanks, Lisa. So I'm looking at the time. And based on all of our interaction, I really want to say to us, as we think about our HBCUs, as we think about our communities, I want us to remind ourselves that, yes, we have text literally in our courses, but no two persons ever read the same book. And that's why critical thinking and problem solving skills are essential for us to ensure we develop in our classroom, in our spaces. These are my references, and I want to leave space for us to ask any questions. So these are, if you feel free to contact me at paul.massy at FMU, uh, niv.edu. I am also on LinkedIn. You'll find me on Instagram, Dr. Paul Massy, and Twitter, well, now X, PM Massy. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Massy, so much for that presentation. So we now have the opportunity for questions and answers or just robust conversation. We always stick around to just make sure that we are creating the space so that folks can discuss and engage what they just learned, as well as engage with each other at large. So I will actually put our final slide up so that you all can see not only the evaluation, but the LinkedIn page where you can go and follow us. So give me one moment to pop that up.
All right, Geneva is going to share some important links with us. You're welcome, Sarah. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Linda.
All right, so so you can see here.
Thank you, Shayla.
If you'd like to take our evaluation, I'll also put that link in the chat. So you can share your feedback with us about today's presentation. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn. The easiest way, if you go on LinkedIn, just look up UNCF Teaching and Learning Center. It'll be the quickest way to get to us, but I'll also put that link in the chat as well. But yeah, thank you so much again. Stick around. Feel free to unmute at this point if you want to engage and discuss, talk about how you use critical thinking in your classes.
Sure.
I know it's a fantastic way to start as an icebreaker. I think having those visuals up and then having students respond or react and talk about what problem statement they think, led to this solution, Jeopardy style, if you will, of giving the problem and then having the answer be the actual question. I love that idea. So thank you, Dr. Massy, for that reframe.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for the opportunity. You're welcome, Vincent.
Can I make a comment or just bring up so one topic so I work in Tuskegee in Alabama at a veterinary school. And one of the areas that you brought up was the students that are not responding. Because I have very sharp students, and the ones in the front are, they always shouting out the answers, and the ones in the back, I talk to students. I just had them in my office telling me that it makes them feel very inadequate when they're more of a processing type of individual, and they're sitting there trying to, okay, she asked this question, they're thinking through, and I actually prefer students who do that, who sit and critically think, what exactly am I asking, and what are the other answers that this possibly could be. And so, but just sitting with this generation of students, it really does something to their self-esteem in terms of not knowing the answer and getting it, quickly and correct. And so your point about bringing up something, having them more engaged, maybe I think that I was like, oh, that's definitely something I can add, because it does, just talking to them on a daily basis, their self-esteem is based on how smart I am and how does everybody think that and I'm thinking it's not, but me saying that doesn't do anything. So I need giving them an outlet to really have that moment to talk about that I think is great. So I appreciate you adding that. I think that's more important than people realize, because we're dealing with a generation that really everything is based on what others think about them. So I thank you for that, for adding that in the conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're welcome.
I agree that that's really important to add to the class. Questions for students who are more process oriented. Even in my own family, I have 3 sons, and my senior, he takes a very long time to process before he comes up with a very interesting response. And my junior, he just talks right away. And I'm thinking, if I had both of them in one class, I would have to proactively have those types of questions that take that process thinking and time for those types of thinkers to respond. So that's really differentiating the instruction properly. And the quick thinkers would still benefit, because they would just be taking more time to process something that they're not used to doing. So I love it too.
I agree. And what I could add, thanks for sharing that. One of the ways to give value to the process thinkers is to also return to class and share some of what was shared on those platforms. If it's Canvas, whatever space you created, once you come back into that next class and you share some of the things that happen, it's also, we are intentionally as educators saying, as forgive me, Rosalind, and the other contributor, we are actually saying to them, we heard you, we saw you, we appreciate that you're a process thinker, we understand that we have diverse learners. So we as educators, we are intentionally doing that when we come back into the classroom and share what was discussed in these spaces.
Nick, I also wanted to say, I think it's important that educators realize that as well. I have a lot of instructors who think, oh, these are the smart students and these are not so smart. And as a faculty member teaching a future doctor, that is very important, that there's different types of learning styles, and that not everyone is quick to, as the other Sarah mentioned, her children, same household, but 2 different ways of coming up with probably similar answers, or even sometimes better answers, because it's well thought of. So I think faculty as well have to be in spaces like this to understand that students are different. And so it's hard to get them to understand, because we do talk about students, unfortunately. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to really add, thank you so much, Dr. Massy, for this presentation. I think it was so needed. I'm definitely going to apply some of the concepts immediately. I have a class in a few minutes. But I just wanted to jump on and say thank you for sharing. What particularly resonated with me was the fact that I teach French at the University of the West Indies, and I happen to do the conversational aspect of French. And so oftentimes there would be a set induction of something that would, spark their interest. And the reality is that I have a group of some very diverse learners. So the ones who would obviously jump quickly, who process very quickly to jump into answer, which I admire. I think it's great. But then what this session did for me was cause me to reflect on the fact that am I sort of forgetting about the ones that don't? And I think the method you give is one I think I'll definitely implement, give them that opportunity to gather their thoughts together, concretize it, put it on paper, and then bring it back to sort of reflect on. I think it'll be a great set induction for another class, yeah? Right. So I thought that was really, really useful. So thank you so much. I have to run, but this was amazing. Looking forward to the others, yeah? Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Brendan, and thank you for being here. Brendan, you just reminded me of something, because I love to be in these spaces. Right. You reminded me that if we are promoting critical thinking skills and we're saying that they need to be evidence-based, then we are supposed to give our students time.
That's so true. That's so true.
We are supposed to be creating spaces where we give them time, because we would realize as part of the learning process, some of these same students are going to say, Dr. Massy, did you see this research? Did you see this that was posted in this space. And that's what makes the learning critical. That's what makes it important.
Yeah.
That's what makes these skills transferable. And we say, you know what?
And
When
I
the
think we take it
students
for
leave,
granted.
they're going to
I,
continue
yeah,
practicing these skills.
I think we take it for granted. We
Yeah.
have these, and perhaps maybe it's a bias of mine. I have an expectation that they're going to know these things, right? I have an expectation that, you know, if I use what I do, if we're discussing, you know, AI art and its effect on, you know, art in general, right? We expect them to have, you know, such profound critical analysis when they need to get evidence to back it up, their opinion. They need to have an opinion, right? So I think it was such a great strategy. So thanks for sharing that.
All right, thanks, Brendan. And all the best with your class.
Thank you.
Dr. Massy, I just want to say thank you for this wonderful presentation and for validating some of the strategies I use in my strategic management class. One of the things that we do is we're divided in teams, and I give a problem to the same problem to about 4 different teams. And then we come back and we make presentations. So you can see how students process things differently, but I'm going to add the component of AI to see what AI says about a particular case analysis. And I think that will give more validity for the students to see that they are processing and thinking and analyzing the situation. So I appreciate that component, and thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Other comments or questions for Dr. Massy or for the group? And thank you all for sticking around. I appreciate it. It really validates the necessary or the necessity for this kind of space when we get to have these kind of conversations. So thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in. Good day, everyone. I'm in the field of music education, and just hearing this conversation, I'm also a multilingualist, so that sign resonated very much with me. It brought back memories of while I was at university doing Spanish, and I remember being on the older side of the class. You know, so I thought that age is something we also have to consider, especially with students, because in the context of having different topics to have conversations about, because I had more experience with the language, whereas you had new learners coming in. Of course, they have all these excellent grades on paper, but in terms of the practical aspect of things, they struggled quite a lot. So, you know, even though sometimes we might think that age, because they're younger, they're going to be sharper, sometimes it can actually end up in the reverse. So that's one of the things that came to mind. And 2, as you mentioned, I also thought about a Google search in terms of research. If you do a typical Google research on particular topics, you're going to get the same list coming up every time. And sometimes that may be even what those quick thinkers are coming up with, the same types of solutions. Whereas if you go deeper, you're going to get some more in-depth research. You're going to get some different solutions. So that's something that I tell people, ignore the first 10 responses that come in Google, go deeper. You know, so those are a couple of things that came to mind.
You know, Lisa, thanks for, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
Thanks so much. One of the things I do, because I'm also instructing the littlest of the littlest with their parents, is, as you mentioned, having them literally come in and teach their parents what they learned in today's session. So the parents become the students, because you know, too often there's so much of a gap, especially in the lower part of education, where you know, we're just responsible and the parents have, that's it, hands off. So we get parents directly involved in the process, so they get that direct feedback, so they know that their children are learning because they're going to teach them.
Thanks, Lisa. I know we have a few more minutes. I just wanted to quickly say, Lisa mentioned the word gaps, and something resonated with me. And thanks, Geneva, for this space. That even in when we do this kind of work, what this allows us to do is also to find the gaps. So students, in doing this research and trying to find the evidence, students will say, but Dr. Massy, how come no one spoke about this group of people, or never did this in this space, or in this state, or in this city, or I know something about this and no one ever. And it gives you an opportunity to say, okay, well, let us do the work. Let us now practice these critical thinking skills, these problem solving skills, and see what we could find out about the issue in our diverse context. So I think once we do this higher order work, it also allows us to generate topics for further research that we can do in our communities and be intentional with the research that we do.
Definitely agree. All right, so in the last couple of minutes, I'll just let everyone know, thank you so much again for joining us. You will receive the recording of today's session via email later this week. And then also you could log on to our LinkedIn and view it there, or share it with your colleagues if you'd like to as well, and your students. So we really appreciate your time today. Please, if you haven't done so already, please complete the evaluation form so we can receive your feedback about today's session, as well as what we should be presenting on for future sessions. Because we have a couple coming down the pike, but this is a longstanding initiative for UNCF. So we will be re-engaging folks coming this fall. So we'll have another host of sessions this coming fall. If you are open, or if you want to present, you know, shameless plug for solicitation. So if you do want to present, you can feel free to email myself or the Teaching and Learning Center team, and we will try to get you on the schedule for fall of 2024 or spring 25. So thank you again. I'll drop my email address in the chat once more. And we thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, everyone.